Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the June 26th PZBA meeting at 7:04. Roll call, please, Jen.
Chairman Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Saywert. Here. Commissioner Weigel is absent by prior notice. Commissioner Simmons.
Here.
And Commissioner Mishevsky
He's on his way, he just texted.
on his way. Okay. We do have a quorum.
All right, great. Let's all stand up and do a Pledge of Allegiance.
Nice to, yeah, to wait to that, have the public hearing. He said he's on his way. He was about 10 minutes, so I, you want me to ask him? No.
The first item of business is approval of May 22nd minutes of the PZBA meeting. To the board, are there any corrections to the minutes as presented? If there are no corrections, I'd like a motion to approve the May 22nd PZBA minutes as presented at 7:05.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Abstain.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
And Chairman Kempa.
Aye. All right, do we need to wait for the missing commissioner?
We have a form.
We have a quorum? Okay.
If it takes minutes to get in here for, because they're gonna need present for the testimony, it'd be great, but not necessary.
Okay,
He's already read it. Dan has put in, he presumed he's already.
right. Okay, so our first item of business is to review the review and adoption of rules for public hearings. So let me explain why we have to do this. So tonight we're talking about the allowance of chickens in the city of Prospect Heights. The brief history on it is the city council has asked this board to facilitate so that the city staff can do research and come up with appropriate rules for to be able to allow or not allow chickens in the city of Prospect Heights. So basically, to handle the issue of chickens in Prospect Heights. We have facilitated this by twice already with a public meeting. We've had 2 meetings where we let the public speak. We let the staff present the current rules, and we let the public. We gave a platform for public to speak regarding the issue, to raise concerns, and provide testimony. Those 2 meetings were held on a more relaxed form, meaning it was more of a question-answer type format, and it was the rules were a little more relaxed. The public hearing is a little more formal, to where we have the rules posted on the board, and we can have the city attorney explain the rules. I'm going to give a very simple explanation, but we have to try to adhere to those rules. So without further ado, let me get let me ask for a motion.
First, or you want to explain these first?
Well, let's.
Okay, motion, do motion first.
Yeah. So can I? Oh, there we go.
And for the record, Commissioner Mishevsky has arrived.
Perfect. So the first item of new business is the review and adaptation of the rules for public hearing. Can I please have a motion to open the,
You don't have to motion, use the motion for the adoption, so you don't need to open the public hearing.
okay, all right. So, Jim, would you like to briefly,
And I'll try to keep it
Explain.
brief, but the public, rules for public hearing are meant to make sure that there's proper decorum and that everyone is heard. As the chairman said, the purpose of this is it's less, it's more, the previous public forums were more relaxed. This is meant to create a public record. So evidence is going to be presented by the applicant, and then also any interested individuals who have signed up or who wish to speak can provide testimony as well. So this is to make sure that proper decorum is held. Note that you are being recorded, and there is a record being created of this event. So there could be a transcript at any time be recorded so that everybody knows what occurred and what was said. We want to make sure that people aren't talking over one another, so the presiding officer, the president, will make sure you recognize the individual who's speaking. You can state who you are, and then you can clearly state your testimony without interruption and without having any worries about being not drowned out by the audience. So we'd ask that these rules are simply to maintain decorum and to make sure that everybody's heard. One of them is a time limit, and that again is the time limit is meant in place so that we are not here all night and repeating the same thing. We're asking that everybody try to keep their testimony to 5 minutes as best as possible. And one of the things that can be done is that if you do have the same testimony as another individual, you are not limited from restating that testimony, but it should be noted that if someone comes up before you, presents several points, and you have those same several points, you're not required to repeat them. Once they're testified to and spoken, they're in the record to be considered. What you're able to do is, if you want to repeat them, you can, but to make sure that we're not here too late or not everybody gets a chance to hear or gets a chance to speak, you can also say you agree with a previous speaker, you adopt their testimony, and you can say whatever additional points you have. And just a reminder that there is public comment on this agenda outside of the hearing. Your comments in public comment, while they are listened to and considered, they are not considered for purposes of the public hearing and what's in the record. So if you do want to speak and you do want your comments and your testimony to be considered by the board for the public hearing and the adoption of the potential adoption or disallowance of the proposed ordinance or amendment, make sure that you do speak. You don't wait to public comment, that you do speak during the testimony portion. Again, we ask that you not discuss amongst yourselves. Again, if you have similar testimony, you can adopt one person to appoint them as a group speaker if you'd like, and you can identify those other individuals, or you can come up afterwards and simply say that you concur with other individuals as well.
all right, thank you. I think that's pretty straightforward. I will ask for a motion to accept into the public record the testimony presented regarding the public hearing.
So motion to adopt the public.
Well, I'll do that as a second motion. First, motion to include this into the record and your testimony.
So no, that's not testimony. So it's
Okay.
just information.
All right, so can I please have a motion to approve the adoption of the rules for public hearing at 7:12?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mashevsky. Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
And Chairman Kempa.
Aye. All right, our second item of business is PZBA case number ZBA 24-01 PUD. It's a public hearing, amendments and variations. The applicant is the City of Prospect Heights. Dan Peterson, Director of Building and Development at 8 North Elmhurst Road in Prospect Heights. And the description of the request is the petitioner is seeking to amend Title 5, Chapter 2, definition and titles, definition and Title 5, Chapter General Provision of Zoning Code to add definitions and regulations for allowing chickens as an accessory use in the R1 Single Family Residential District per section 5-6-1 of the City of Prospect Heights zoning code. Can I please have a motion to open the public hearing for case number ZBA 24-01 PUD at 7:14 PM?
I'll make that motion.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Aye.
Commissioner Machewski,
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward,
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye. We have the applicant here. We would like to ask to present the case for us and the public. Do you swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman Campa, Zoning Board of Appeals members, and audience, thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. I want to first thank the residents dearly for providing 2 full meetings of public comment and information to help formulate the presentation tonight and the direction of the amendments. Tonight, to that application, we have to meet the standards of Chapter 5-10-10, which is the standards of approval for text amendments. And to summarize the areas that we will show tonight in our my testimony, is that we meet those standards to have the text amendment move forward. Standards for text amendments, the first one is that the net impact of the proposed amendment, if granted, will be beneficial to the entire community and will not be harmful to a local area in particular. The amendments will be beneficial to the community and not be harmful. The city is proposing the text amendments to codify keeping of chickens and as an accessory use, and provides the regulations that will not be harmful to other property owners throughout the R1 district and the city as a whole. Testimony tonight is that it will highlight the difference between the animal control ordinances and the zoning code, which is land use, and why we need these. Specifically, animal control ordinances list what's prohibited. We, in land use, look at if it's not specifically listed as approved, it's expressly prohibited, and I'll touch on that section further in my testimony. The proposed amendments also address folks outside of the R1, because we do have properties in the flood zone which are regulated flood areas by FEMA. Some of the structures that are on properties may impact the city's overall community rating system, which impacts flood insurance rates, and those rates are passed along to all residents of the community in the R1 and R2 districts, and we'll show those areas and why it's important, and our responsibility as a city to make sure that we have those codified and what is going to be allowed and not allowed. 2, the need exists for general types of the use proposed and indeed satisfy it more closely than other possible uses. We agree, the city has always agreed that keeping of chickens is a good use in the city as an accessory use in the R1 district. I will show tonight why it's important to adopt reasonable regulations and where the zoning code as it's currently written does not allow it. Number 3, the proposed use is compatible with the current comprehensive land plan of the city in effect on the date of the application. Our 2014 comprehensive plan talks about the zoning code is that it's designed to promote and protect public health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the city, encourage the most appropriate use of the land throughout the city, prevent incompatible and non-conforming uses, eliminate non-conforming uses. And I'll highlight how those non-conforming uses are in the testimony. The proposed use is compatible and harmonious with uses in the surrounding general area. Establishing the use and associated ordinance will ensure will ensure that the use is compatible and allowed throughout the R1 district. The proposed text amendments will provide reasonable, consistent, published rules and regulations that both the residents that want to keep chickens and then those that don't understand and know what the expectations are for the land use. Number 5, the area described in the petition does not lie wholly or partly within floodplain as defined by the Illinois Department of Transportation and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. A large portion of the city does lie within a floodplain and floodway. There are over 1,100 properties within the city that are required to have federal flood insurance. And by not regulating accessory structures and not encouraging the proper placement of those properties that may be in a floodplain or floodway could detrimentally impact other residents. So it is a necessary evil, not a necessary evil, but it's something that we are required by federal law to check for on our properties so that we don't have violations. And I will touch on all of those in the testimony tonight. The city has always been a kind of a rural feel to it. In 1976, the city incorporated and became a municipal form of government. It established as a city. At that time, there were people that had chickens because in unincorporated Cook County, housing of chickens is allowed. As I showed previously, the only guideline that Cook County had is you had to provide proper shelter. There was no other guidance in terms of land use, okay? The only reference in the city code in that original 1977 zoning ordinance is still in there today, and it's right here on the, let me blow this up here so everybody can see. Under the R1 district, the only reference in the zoning code to agricultural uses is defined in Chapter 2 of this title. So when we get into the definition of agriculture, it talks about farming, and in 1977 we had lots of properties that were still, come on, I don't want that, excuse me. Patrick, let me see here. Where did it go? PDF. There we go. All right. Agriculture and farming were required to have a minimum of 5 acres. Today, we only have one lot in town that meets that requirement, and it's a vacant school that's been proposed for redevelopment. So that is the only reference in our current city code to keeping agriculture or performing agriculture in the city. So we need to add definitions. And then looking, because in the R1 district, it says accessory uses must be in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 3 of this title. Chapter 3 is the general provisions section of the zoning code. Chapter 3 is silent on the issue. So therefore, if I read through Chapter 3 fully, uses not specifically permitted in the districts. And then how our structure of the zoning code is, per the code, when a use is not specifically listed as a permitted use, such use is hereby expressly prohibited and may become approved through this process. And so the goal with tonight is to establish the rules to allow chickens to maintain as an approved accessory use, so that at some point in time, nobody can come and say, well, why are you letting them in? Your code doesn't allow them. That's one of the purposes of doing this, and it would benefit the community as a whole to have set guidelines and set rules. The animal control ordinance, like I've talked about at the previous information meetings, and I'm going to touch on tonight, is a regulation, a police regulation. And for years, animal control was thought to govern all things. And in the police world, and their codes are structured where if it's prohibited, it's listed. If it's not listed, then therefore it's assumed to be allowed. But the police ordinance doesn't manage land use. So that's the big difference. And there will be, when this is approved, whatever direction the Plan Commission and Zoning Board and what recommendations they concur on and City Council does, will be clarified as to what those rules are going to be. Lot coverage then is the only other place that limits or has anything to do about accessory structures. And in Chapter 3 of Title 5, dog and animal houses and kennels have always been an accessory structure. This definition, as in today's code, is the same definition that is in the 1977 adopting ordinance of the city. And therefore, all accessory structures must follow the lot coverage requirements of Chapter 4 of Title 5. And that's limiting on size, height, location on the lots. So what we're trying to do with the ordinances to codify these requirements so everybody knows what is out there and how they can comply with the ordinance and be in compliance with the zoning code. And then finally, the last thing is in Chapter 3 of Title 5 is we do have to ensure that the land use regulations of this title be supplemented by any flood control ordinance enacted by the City of Prospect Heights, which is Title 7 of the Municipal Code, which the city engineer is responsible. Well, if we don't get permits, if we don't do checks on what structures are out there, we could be violating our own flood control ordinance. And that could then lead to a reduction in our community ratings class schedule and impact people throughout the whole city on their flood insurance rates. Health and sanitation. This is another ordinance that we have to look at, and that's the noise control regulations. Birds, animals and birds, the keeping of any animal or bird, which by causing frequent or long continued noise shall disturb the comfort or repose of any persons in the vicinity. The problem with this section of the code, and as it's written, it's unenforceable. Because a city staff, whether it's a police officer, a building inspector, somebody else, has to hear this noise. We can give them a notice, but if they do it again and don't call, it doesn't solve the problem. So part of the proposed recommendations will hopefully prevent and eliminate this confusion, lack of an enforceable ordinance. Again, I've talked about the flood zone in my testimony, or so far in my report. Oh, excuse me, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, that was, here we go. I'll get to the actual draft in a minute. I'm establishing the standards. This map on the screen is the city's flood hazard map. All the areas with blue and red dashes are regulated floodways, which means they are designed to flood and will flood according to the FEMA and the FERM maps. The blue area are floodplains, and then there's some brown, which are secondary regulated floodplains. The rest of the gray is not in a regulated flood zone. There's a difference between what types of structures are allowed in each of those types of zones. And what we are proposing by having people register their properties and we review their properties is to ensure that the structures they have on there are not in violation of the federal law and impact. And this is a requirement that we have as a rated community. And it does, every permit that I review, I have to check the flood maps for compliance with the flood out there. So we're not asking anything new that's already in the ordinance. It's what we're asking to is ensure that people who want to keep their chickens do the process so we can. Because I will tell you, when we looked at the ordinance, we didn't see that chickens weren't allowed. So over years, I'm sure people have been, they ask the question, can you have chickens in town? Yes, you can. They're not prohibited by the or the police animal control ordinance. What was missing is that the follow-up statement or the follow-up question is, what are the other regulations that have to go with it? And because there were none, it was hard to do it. So by doing this, we'll provide the tools to educate residents on how to be good, compliant keepers of chickens in their properties. So based on this gives us rise to meet the standards of the text amendment. And so now I'm going to go into the draft ordinance, and hopefully we did make copies for people. Most of this stuff has been talked about at previous meetings in terms of recommendations. Oh, that's there we go. Is this the one? Patrick, which one did you save it under?
He's coming.
I'm sorry, the draft ordinance.
Is this the,
This is,
the accept?
no.
That should be this one here.
Oh, yeah, it's at the top of this page, thank you. Yep, there we go. Yep, that's,
You could probably find
yep, I'll
it.
find it there, thank you. Sorry about the delay. So the proposed draft ordinance is going to take two parts. We're going to, the PZBA will handle the zoning code changes. Once the zoning code changes go through, then the police department will amend the animal control section to match so that the two codes will be in sync, where before they did not match and cause conflict. Definitions. We'll be adding definition proposed in the section 5-2-3 related to chickens. Clearly defining what a coop is, because right now it's just listed as a dog or animal house or kennel. We will be defining other animals that what is and what will not be allowed. So the requirements, we are proposing a totally standalone section in the zoning code specifically for keeping of chickens in the R1 district. And what we will be formally doing is listing it as an approved accessory, as an accessory use in chapter 5-6-1, similar to home occupations, similar to community housing facilities, fences, parking structures, and parking uses. There are a number of other uses that are there, and we will have, per chapter 3, the rules to go along with the approved uses. Now, we did talk about this during the public meeting, is that we're going to be requiring that a proposed property will register with the Illinois Department of Agriculture as a livestock premise. We'll require initial building and zoning inspections to see what the conditions are currently of existing properties and identify a building and zoning. Hopefully they're in compliance. Hopefully not. If they're not in compliance, we will grant, and the staff is proposing a time frame in which properties can be brought back into compliance. And then we're going to be asking that that be done annually to look at changes. And then this is for new folks that are looking to get into it, that they should be getting their permit prior to buying their chickens or doing any of the work. And the example is that is today, or actually late last week, but today, had to send out a notice of violation to a gentleman. Oops, excuse me, let's go back. Be there. Patrick, I hit the button. Jordan.
The photo.
It's the, not that one. Try the PDF. No,
Your PDF, and then you want the photo?
yeah, I wanted the photo. That should have been in the red. Let's get the clock. I want the clock. What? Oh, I hit on the red.
Steve, go here. Let me see. I got you right quick. I think you closed it.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
I was trying to expand the picture. So this structure, I was out doing an inspection at a house that had a valid permit. At first looks, it is a beautiful coop, got a beautiful run, meets all the requirements of what we're proposing, except for two things. Number one, here, he's running the electricity for this coop over an extension cord that goes across a yard. That's a safety violation, safety hazard. The second issue is even though it's in the rear yard, this is built in the required 10-foot utility easement, and it's directly over the city sanitary sewer main. Okay, so if there's problems, that's going to have to be ripped up. And if this individual would have came in and gone through the application process, we could have saved this individual a lot of money, a lot of time, and we could have got to a spot of being compliant. Without having the rules, without having this established, this individual, unintentionally created problems. And we're trying to solve it so we don't have this issue. And folks, we know that there's none of you out here who intentionally intended to be in non-compliance and non-conformance with the code. We understand that. So that's why we're trying to put these in place, and we will be allowing time for people to bring their properties into conformance. So back to the power of let's go here to the, there we go. So as a condition, what we are looking at is registering it at the Illinois Department of Agriculture, getting the proper building and zoning inspections to make sure that the structures are built like anything else. We require permits for garden sheds and gazebos and other structures. And these chicken coops are just like any other accessory structure on a property. And we'll talk about what the zoning requirements are for placement of those structures. And then a permit should be issued prior to buying chickens so we can eliminate these other potential violations and expenses. Now, during this process, by getting the permit, you do agree to allow the access for the inspection. We're proposing a one-time annual inspection, but if there are complaints, we notify the owners and make and schedule appointments. We are proposing that 20 hens shall be permitted regardless of the lot size. And we did explain the rationale of how we got to 20. We did survey and evaluate over 20 local municipalities, 2 agricultural suburban counties in their areas, and they all limited at a max of 6 chickens. Excuse me, one had 8. But those towns, all of them, especially our neighbors, have smaller lots. But when you average all of those numbers out, the basis for 20 comes to 1,000 square feet of lot size per hen, which is average of what the suburban other ordinances out there. So we have a rationale to establish the size. There's been no best practices and no standards that determine what lot size per bird should be. All hens should be kept within a coop or enclosure, and this goes back to keeping your birds on your property, not to be at large. Again, we require the maximum size of a accessory structure to be 200 square feet, so that's 10 square feet per hen if you're going to use that ratio of 20 birds. Then it's fully compliant to the maximum size. All enclosures shall comply with the requirements of lot coverage located in the rear, 200 square feet, and we'll go through some diagrams of typical lots of the things we have to look at for all accessory structures. And then, again, the rooster's prohibiting. A building permit for the enclosure is required above the zoning review. The 11 is a standard, keep your area clean, kept. You should have a sanitation plan as part of the registration. Sale of eggs, hens, or chicken keeping stuff as a home occupation is not allowed. Slaughtering of hens is prohibited. All non-conforming properties, we are proposing a 12-month window for folks to be able to bring their properties into compliance. There are other towns that do 30 days. There's other ordinances that do shorter, 3 months. Staff believes that the folks have been doing this, they've been doing it without the intent of violating, so we want to give them an opportunity to comply without penalties, without, because the residents have never intended not to comply. So we want to work with them on that time. We'll be proposing a fee for the keeping chickens permit, and that's a minimum established fee, which is $40 for the zoning review and $50 for the building permit for the initial application. Annual zoning reviews, annual fee after the initial will be $40 a year, which is our minimum zoning review and safety inspections that we do at other uses. We do have a deal, because sometimes they're, as well-intended as people are, things happen, we get complaints. We will investigate, and if there you'll get a notice. If it gets cleaned up and gets addressed, it goes no further. However, if it goes to 3 serious violations that require action above just a violation notice, then there could be the possibility of a revocation for 1 year. We're not saying a permanent revocation, but a 1 year. Come on, think about what's been going on. How can we be compliant? And then if that doesn't work and it continues to happen, the penalties clause at the bottom is the standard for all zoning violations, not just keeping with chickens. This is the penalty clause that's for the whole Title V zoning, any violation within there. If we have to write tickets and go to court, this is the penalty structure that's already adopted. So I talked about how does the lot size, how does that work? This is an example of what we call a corner lot. And a corner lot, let me get rid of this screen here, I'm sorry. So the orange up here is a street, so that's a typical corner. The orange line represents the 40-foot front yard setback. Nothing can be in that. The black line is the 120 feet that accessory structures by the code, which has always been the code, are supposed to be back from the property line. This corner side yard is 25 feet, and then the green line represents the standard 5-foot side yard setback. If there's no utility easement or no sanitary sewer, it could be 5 feet to the rear yard. If there's a sanitary sewer in your property and an easement there, then that distance increases to 10 feet, where you cannot have your coop at. The reason for the 120 for accessory structures is to make sure that it's not close enough where it may impact the neighbor's house, bedrooms, living space, kitchens, decks, those things that they use for comfort by the accessory use. Another example, and this is pretty typical through what we have in town, these are what's called a reverse corner lot. Reverse corner lot is one where the backyard of the corner property, the rear yard line, abuts with the front yard of the neighbor behind them. And we evaluate all permits for sheds, fences, and other accessory structures, and that red area is the area in which no accessory structures can be placed in, because that's technically looking out the front window of the neighbor behind you. And that's been on the books since 1977. Again, the 120 foot from the back front line, here's the 40 foot front yard, here's your corner side yard setback. Here's your 10 foot or 5 foot here, and then this area here would be where your coops and runs could be. And that's the area we go for other structures as well. Then this is a typical interior lot. This is straightforward. 5 yard setbacks on the side, 5 or 10 in the back, 120 feet back, nothing in this area here, and these are straightforward, simple. All accessory structures have to meet those standards today. Now, the city does have a lot of unique lots, and this is why it's even more critical to establish rules and guidelines and require the permit, because we have a lot of heart of truth triangular lots up in the Glenbrook Wildwood neighborhood. We've got a lot of curved lots and a lot of lots that you don't know really what's the front yard, what's the rear yard. So it's even more critical that when people come in and get the permit first, we can do a good evaluation to find the best spot on the lot for a coop. Now, this is all basic how we evaluate our permits when things come in. So this is constant standard throughout. We're asking that the chicken coops, which are defined accessory structure, follow the same processes. If you notice here, because this is an interior lot and this is a corner and this guy's house is longer, if that chicken coop was any closer than this 120-foot setback, that could be right underneath a bedroom window. And that's not what we want. That's not what the neighbors want. And so that's, we do regulate that. And we talked about the flood control already. So with this, I'm going to highlight here and present in the evidence a new exhibit. And this is something that we've been made aware of, and it does show the importance. I'd like to present River Trails Condominium Association comparison between 24 and 25 flood insurance premium costs for their property. So what this shows and why it's important that we do look at all these accessory structures is last year, River Trails paid $110,400 for flood insurance as a complex for 360 condominium units because they're in a flood plain. This year's premium, the 2025, for the same condition, $50,000 deductible, is projected to be $145,000. And if there's violations in the flood zone areas and we lose our community rating scale, we lose a 20% discount, so that price could be in excess of $170,000 a year, in excess of $400 a condominium to those residents. So this is why having established rules and having inspections will benefit the community as a whole. With this, that completes my testimony. I do want to finish off by one final statement, is that from the beginning, we've never wanted to take chickens away from the people. We feel that that accessory use is a viable, important use within the city. But what this has shown is that the city did not have the proper zoning approvals to permit this, and it could go away, and we want to preserve it as an approved accessory use. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll do that afterward. So I would propose that we let the board ask the applicant any questions, and then we would ask the public to either make statements or ask the questions to the applicant. I can start off with, I have a couple of questions for the applicant. The first one is, which code has the precedence, the police code or the zoning code?
The zoning code, because the zoning code takes precedence because that regulates the land use. All the police code does is regulate, is it a animal control violation? It does nothing to dictate how the land is. It doesn't give the rules on how the chickens, in this case, or placement in coops, any of that. All it says is you can have them, but there's no other rules that go along with it.
But if the chickens didn't have any coop, then there is no land use. Then the chickens are just free roaming in the yard.
It's still a use because the city does, the only reference to chickens other than they're not listed is in the animal control ordinance. There's a section that nothing in their code would prohibit legitimate commerce, farming, and poultry for food. So, or agriculture is what the word is in their code. So when I look at the definition of agriculture, there's no definitions in the police code. I go to the definitions, you need to have 5 acres. By the police's own ordinances, we could state that none of the properties in the city of Prospect Heights could have chickens because you don't have 5 acres. So the intent here is to write the rules so that people can have the chickens and enjoy that accessory use.
Yes, so this was kind of confusing to me. So, you know, in an event where we didn't do anything, that we would still be in violation, meaning that you know, I assume even if the two codes were to work in sync, then it doesn't matter which one takes precedence, I guess. But
well, the police will look at it not so much as a local ordinance violation. They're looking at, yeah, we got a call, knock it off. A lot of times they get the call, they'll go out there, correct it, it will not be followed up on. And then we get another call, or ultimately it's gone to the police 3 or 4 times, or they have another call and they can't respond. They can't write the citation for the noise ordinance. And so then by the time we get it, we go out there, there's no noise ordinance violation. There's, you know, yeah, person's by that point in time maybe got their free ranging chickens back in their yards. And then there's no violation, and it doesn't get reported and it doesn't go on, but the behavior continues. So we're, in our viewpoint, having chickens, you know, just like having a shed, having a home occupation, having a home business is an accessory use. Because the primary use in the R1 is strictly for detached residential. It doesn't talk about raising chickens. It doesn't, that's a choice outside of the occupancy and use of that property as a residence. So by creating the requirements does now make keeping of chickens a codified, legitimate, allowed accessory use.
Okay. There was a statement in, I think in the proposed verbiage for the amendment, that the permit be obtained prior to purchasing hens. Is that prior to purchasing hens every time, or is this the first time?
No, the first time. We understand that the folks here tonight and a lot of the people already have them. That doesn't apply to them. But what we're trying to do is like the example of the coop I showed you, the picture. That person 7 months ago did not have the coop. 7 months ago, when I was the last time I did an inspection there, did not have a chicken coop. They were new to the game. And if they had come in and got the permit, found out what the rules were, they would been able to put that coop in a compliant position, been able to enjoy it. Now we have to do an enforcement action for building without a permit, putting it in the wrong location on the lot.
So if it's only the first time, so we apply for permit and the city does the inspection, everything is in code, everything is great, why do annual inspections?
Conditions change. We see this on our annual business license inspections. We do it on our life safety inspections. We see it in our rental inspection programs. What may be in compliant in 2023 is now non-compliant. Maybe additional structures have been added. Maybe
Yeah, but there would be
bumpers.
violation of not getting a permit.
But the issue is we don't, unless there's a complaint on the issue, we don't know it's there, and we don't know it's in violation. We do inspections on all our multifamily housing for a multitude of reasons, and it's mainly life safety and code compliance to ensure that the landlords are following the rules, okay? With this, an annual inspection, like other towns, and then when I talk to other code officials, is not to keep the good chicken owners. It's the ones that want to now, oh, I got it, they're never gonna come back, I'm gonna do it again. Well, what that will do is then it'll give us an opportunity to say, hey, we don't want to go down a revocation of that, because we really don't. That takes time, it takes resources, it does other things. But if they're changing their usage, now they're back potentially impacting the other people in the community with potential noise and violations of the code.
It's just, it seems like a lot of inspections, I mean, that it's more than like our new construction inspections and.
It's de minimis, it's minimal. We estimated, we did a drive through the town survey this winter when the leaves were off the tree, and we estimate that there's less than 100 properties that have chicken coops, and who knows if they're still actively producing or using. In statements during the public meetings, it was confirmed that that estimation was probably pretty close to being accurate. So that's very minimal. You know, we're set up and designed to do the permits. We're designed to do the inspections, and it doesn't take very long. If the plan is correct and approved and what we see out there, it doesn't take very much time at all.
I'm just going to go down my list. I have only a couple more questions, and the first one is, what is the reason for livestock registration?
Under the, mainly the Illinois Department of Agriculture want to know where there's mainly production farms. However, the reason we're looking at it is last year during an inspection on the swimming pool in the rear yard, I noticed that we had 5 residences within that block, three right next to each other and 1 behind, that all had chickens. Well, if there's an outbreak of a disease, it gives us a way to, the Illinois Department of Agriculture has those properties on their list that they can possibly provide resources. It's not necessary, but we thought that it's a free registration, and if something were to go wrong, they get notified of a health issue with the livestock, the flock, and could potentially provide resources. If, again, these are proposals, as if it's something that doesn't want to be in there, then, and not all communities that I researched require it. Quite a few of them do, quite a few of them don't.
I think that's all I had a question about trying to figure out how to handle there's another way to handle the roosters, but I guess you mentioned that the noise ordinance is already in the zoning code, and it's difficult.
It's in, it's in the police animal control ordinance, and it's in the health ordinance. And it's virtually impossible, unless we're out there at such time that it's actually happening, to issue a citation or an advisory notice. We can issue a letter, but there's no real teeth to it. Yeah, please stop, please stop. And if they don't stop, what penalties are there? What, how are you going to get compliance out of that individual that doesn't want to take care or take control of their flock?
That's all the questions I had.
I had one. In terms of limit of 20 hens, regardless of lot size, why, if you have a half acre, you can get 20. If you have a full acre, why not 40? Is it due to the size of the accessory structure can only be 200, and we're assuming 200 in this 10 square feet per hen? Is that the driving? Is that what's driving it?
It drives to the number of allowed accessory structures.
Okay.
We're limited on the number of accessory structures that you can have per size of the lot.
Okay.
I have a question. So Dan, let's say they do this and now it's the third year. What is the inspection?
The inspection is just go back, verify that the conditions haven't changed. It's a zoning inspection to make sure things have not moved. If they have not moved, it's less than a 5-minute inspection.
But I mean, are they counting the birds? Are they checking to see if the feed is?
What we'll do is to make sure if their sanitation plan is in order, look at the birds, look to see if there's any change in the structure or placement of the coop.
Is that done with an appointment, or is it done?
Yeah, we would schedule appointments. We schedule appointments for all our routine inspections. Because most of the time, these structures are usually in people's backyards. If they're allowing their hens to be outside of the coop or at that level or whatever, we just don't go walking through people's backyards. We don't open gates. We don't do that unless we have permission.
A question on the definition of your coop. So it's unclear to me, so I understand that there's a structure for the coop, and then some people have a fenced area adjacent to the coop. So I'm wondering if that would be considered part of the square footage of the accessory structure. And then you also alluded to the fact that they could just have a 6-foot fence for their hens. So obviously their whole backyard is going to be an accessory structure. So, and the picture that you showed is actually a good case of that. So what part of that picture would you consider an accessory structure versus just the run area?
The whole thing, because it's under roof. Under the current zoning code, it doesn't regulate whether it's roofed or not. It can be without roofs, it can be without sides, it can be that if it's a structure that's used for a purpose other than, let me get up here as quickly as possible, excuse me.
Because your definition doesn't say anything about a roof.
Well, we go back to the existing accessory buildings accessory structures definition. And in there, and forgive me, I don't mean to read this all off, but it says, accessory building shall be defined as an accessory structure, whether affixed to or resting upon the ground and detached from the primary residence, having walls opened or enclosed, with or without a roof, and specifically identified as follows: garage, carport, open-sided summer house, barn, an enclosed summer house, accessory storage building, screen structure, dog or animal house / kennel, playhouse, clubhouse, storage shed, gazebo, fallout shelter, it goes on. So that definition is already there. So if it's designed for the purpose of the coop, then it would meet that one.
So again, if you have a structure with a roof on it, that's what you're calling the accessory structure. But if the fenced area around it is not going to be part of that.
So, you know, we heard from some of the residents that have portable coops. And those are still, because they're not affixed to the ground, they are on the ground, resting upon the ground. But we're looking at the size, the square footage, because that all gets calculated into the lot coverage.
So that's like one big component, so you would consider that whole.
But if they, and we're not going to get out there if someone wants to put in a chicken wire with some temporary stakes and move it around. We're not intending to go out and regulate that. That's not the intent of this. But if you're going to build a structure that incorporates all that, then it's limited to 200 square feet.
But the run would not be considered part of that,
Well,
or would it?
it may, because I got to figure out which picture that was. So, come on back. Why did I close that again? My computer works differently. No, my picture works differently. There, I need to go into. No. What? It's on, oh yeah, that's right. It's on the desktop. I'm sorry. Thank you. There we go. So this structure here has a fenced run that's attached to the coop. That would be considered a full accessory structure. So we would look at that as having to be within the 200 square
Because
feet.
it's covered on top.
Even if that did not have the roof structure, because of the walls, placed on the ground, it's defining an area that is to be intended to be used for the accessory use of keeping chickens.
So maybe just the fact that it's designed to keep predators out, it's more contained. I mean, it's a run, but it's obviously more than a run.
Correct. And if you go to what our current definition says, whether it's got walls or not walls, or whether they're enclosed or not enclosed, as long as it's designed with, it's part of that structure, that all is included in that 200 square feet.
But if
Wait,
we
so
have-
I'm confused. So are we saying that we can keep chickens just out in the open in a 200 square foot fenced off area? Or do they have to be in a coop?
Well, and what we heard from those folks is you have to have a coop form for protection, for roosting, for feed, for protection, right? So you have a coop structure. You also have to have a run. A lot of the coops and structures that I've seen are very similar to that. And
I mean, that's what I understand as a
So-
coop.
Now, if someone wants during the day and they're at home and let their birds, we're not concerned about that. We're concerned that this is being for the purposes of keeping the chickens, keeping the hens.
And just one other question about the annual inspection. Are there any other accessory structures that require an annual inspection?
Swimming pools, sometimes we go out there. Other than that, no. But most of the other structures do not have, you know.
I mean, if you're going to change the size of your structure, you'd have to come in for a new permit anyway.
Correct.
And so if you're increasing the size, or if there's a complaint of a neighbor, you would go out there anyway, and you would address it.
Correct. one of the things that we're trying to address is that situations like this where, okay, this year I had six hens, okay? I may want to get next year 12 more, okay? Now, does that coop, and now because they're already permitted, do they come in and get another permit at that time? Or, and you know, what if they said, oh, I got, we might just put it in, and then realize they don't get the permit, then we can talk to them at the time of the next annual inspection. And then it's just a stopgap, a check valve of making sure that the ordinances are being complied with.
I have a question, Director Peterson. As far as like the portable hen houses or whatever, how do you regulate them as far as, you know, they're not anchored to the ground? My neighbor, a couple days ago, there are trampolines in my yard because of high winds.
Again, where that approval or where those comments came from, I don't know, because the code has always said it either can be affixed or resting upon. A trailer with wheels is resting upon. We're looking at the structure, so therefore it would still be viewed as an accessory structure. It would be permitted. You know, we're not going to say you can't have that because it says right there. It's resting on the ground. Today it happens to be in this part of that defined area. Tomorrow it could be over here. As long as the rest of the accessory structures and your portable structure have less square footage than what is already set in the code, that doesn't matter.
But from a safety and health, I mean,
I've not seen or heard from any of the code officials that I talked to when I interviewed on their ordinances have any hesitations about portable coops. So I'm not concerned about that.
You have a, I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott. You're continue, I'm sorry. Are you done?
yes.
Oh, no problem. You have on here, unless a rear yard is enclosed with a solid 6-foot high privacy fence, in terms of, does that mean if you have a 6-foot privacy fence, you're not required to have a coop?
No. So if you want to let your chickens roam, and we've had that, like I just 2 weeks ago got a picture sent to me of hens running across West Ridge. By the time I got out there, they were all back in the yard. But if you want to let your chickens run your property in your rear yard, that's your choice to do it. Just you have to keep them contained. So what we're doing to help to do that is either you have a temporary fence where it's there, but I'm saying that doesn't always work. If you want to let them run, but then you need to have a privacy fence around your rear yard so they don't become a nuisance or get into other people's property.
Director Peterson, so this new ordinance that you're talking about is regarding anything that's coming new. What about the existing structures that are up? How's that going to affect them? And is there some type of a grandfather clause on the existing?
We're recommending a 1 year from the time of they get their registration in, or the 1 year. I think I listed in the ordinance 1 year from a date of adoption, but that's up for final recommendation approval. But the zoning code does not look at this as a legal non-conforming, because there's always been rules governing the lot coverage, land use, and that. And so all the properties who want to be in it will have to get to a point of compliance. And we're willing to work on that. I think in recommended 1 year because that's reasonable, because there's possibly expenses, there's possibly some other moving. I know some towns that give in their part of their ordinance, it's 30 days. I think that's unrealistic for someone who never intended to violate the code to begin with.
Is there an option for them? I know that some residents have called, and these might be old coops too, that were compliant at one point, or were told they're compliant at one point, and they built based on that. ability to come and ask for variance? Would that be a hardship? I know that comes back to us.
The zoning code actually is an intent purpose is to, what page is it on? Actually, in Title Chapter 1 of the zoning code, the purpose of the zoning code is to correct non-conforming conditions. And because a lot of this stuff was put up and we've never had the permits, never had that, they're not, technically not legal non-conforming, they're just non-conforming. And so therefore, there's not an option at this point in time, other than a window of opportunity to get them to comply with those rules that have always been in the zoning code.
Were you talking about if there's like a lot that is unusual or that wouldn't comply, or just somebody that's got something existing now?
Some people that something existing now. If someone has built something existing, but let's say it's non-conforming based on what you're proposing today, and would they be able to come in and get a variance for something that's existing?
Just because it was existing is not a hardship. And there's nothing unique or special about a particular lot to not be in conformance. And that's one of the standards that has to be met for variation. And if it can't meet that standard, it can't be granted a variation. And the code, under our legal non-conforming section of the zoning code, says that use has to be in existence at the time of the original adoption of the zoning code in 1977. So if you were here in 1977, you had chickens, you had structures that don't comply with this, then you are viewed as legal non-conforming, and as long as that use has been in continual use, then you're entitled to maintain that. But this, because the uses, all of the requirements have always been on the books, they've never been conforming, not by any intent or any purpose, or by someone trying to violate the code.
Well, no, that's not true, right? Because my understanding is that all of a sudden, we're calling it a use. We're giving it a use name. So now it's not going to be complying. Right now, it's not a non-conforming use because it's not a use.
It's an illegal use.
But keeping chickens right now isn't defined as a use in our code. Isn't that true?
Well, I think, I don't want to get into the middle of testimony, I just want to clarify.
Oh, I'm
Are
sorry.
you talking about, I think there's two different things, the actual land use as far as the accessory structure?
Keeping of chickens is not the violation, it's the structures that go along with it.
Okay. Well,
No.
but it's not yet because we haven't adopted it as a use. Right? I mean, that's,
I mean, the structures are allowed because we can have dog runs and things like, so structures are allowed.
They're allowed, but they have to conform to the standards of
Right,
the code.
right.
So if they conform to the standards of code, they're allowed to keep. If they don't conform, then they need to be brought to conformance.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying and I thought I heard Commissioner Sayward say that, or Patel, that if it's already there, can they get a variation, or is it legal non-conforming? But it's not.
so essentially you're trying to, I get where you're giving it the use of chicken keeping so that the zoning regulations can help make sure that the coop is an appropriate size and location on the property. And I think that's going in the right direction. But by doing that, you're also limiting the number of chickens already then, because you're limiting the coop to a maximum of 200 square feet. So it seems like you're limiting them in two ways. By the number, but you're already limiting them, you're limiting them to the number of chickens by the fact that they could have a maximum of 200 square feet. And that's only if, whether or not they have other accessory use
So,
buildings.
so not all, even if people are allowed to have up to 20 birds, not all properties will be allowed to have that based on the conditions of those properties.
Correct, so maximum would be 200. Maximum would be 200 square feet.
And maximum would be 3 accessory structures.
Right.
And then if you have that already on your property, and then you add a chicken coop, now you're in violation.
So I guess you could have 3 200 square foot,
No.
3 200,
Total.
No,
Structures
each-
that add up to.
wait, you can have up to 3 accessory structures. So say
how-
if there's no accessory structures on,
So how this works under our zoning code is that you can have up to 5% of your lot coverage under accessory structures, and it's specifically spelled out in the code that you're entitled up to a 720 square foot detached garage, one detached garage, one shed up to a maximum or other accessory structure up to 200 square feet, and then a third structure that could be no greater than 80 square feet for a total of 1,000 square feet of accessory structure, and that's based on the average 20,000 square foot lot size. 5% is 1,000 square feet. So if you are already maxed out in accessory structures and you want to have chickens, then either a shed's got to go,
Right.
something else has got to go, or you don't get approved. And that's what part of this evaluation is, you know, we've got a lot of not a lot per se, but I've seen where we've had people with multiple smaller structures, we've addressed those. You know, we've had people try and put in 800 or additions onto already maxed out garages by
So-
calling them wood sheds and other things, and all it is expanding their garages.
okay, so I guess my point is that I'm just trying to understand if we actually need to put a number of 20, which I think is actually a generous number, do we have to put in a number if we're already limiting the square footage of the coop? So I guess you can have up to 5% as an accessory structure. And does it say, I mean, could you have more than one chicken coop then? You could have one that's 200 square feet and
And the
an
other one that's 80.
80, another one that would be 80.
So if you did that, and if you did the math and you did 10 square feet per bird in the one, that's 20. If you did 10 square feet from the 80, that's 8 more. You could have up to 28 hens. So therefore, there's got to be a number limitation, not just based on square footage of this accessory structure. The accessory structure at 200 is the maximum.
But you don't give a use for an accessory structure, right? So so you could have, if you call it a garage, but you keep chickens in it? I mean, could you have a 750 square foot chicken coop? I mean, I'm just trying to,
No, because now you're getting into, if you got a 720 square foot, the likelihood is you're gonna have more than 20 birds, and now you're getting into agricultural use and you don't have 5 acres.
okay, I'm just wondering if the number 20 is even needed, I guess, if we're putting, we're trying to do it by the zoning
So,
regulations.
If you're doing, if numbers in the zoning regulation are appropriate, you can establish a number, like a number of structures, number of birds, it's the same rationale. There will be situations, and we're not going to dictate the size of the birds, the subspecies of the hens, and you could have a 200 square foot structure that if a person had small hens, could theoretically have more birds in that 200 square feet. Because a smaller bird does not, from what the folks said here during the public meetings, is they don't take up as much space.
Mhm. Okay.
So limitation on the number of birds is important.
We also talked about having some kind of an education component on care of birds, and not that we as a governing body would do that, but maybe a handout, and maybe some of the organizations that are involved with, you know, good care for chickens could help put something together. But, and I would think that that's where this encouragement to register with the Illinois Department of Agriculture that's where that should go, as opposed to, again, in the zoning regulations.
And if that's a direction the PZBA would like to go, that's fine. I have had conversations with a couple of the residents who are there who have offered to do that type of educational piece. It was put on hold because we couldn't start anything until we had what is going to be that educational piece. The village of Mundelein, Lake County, Will County, the village of Darien, others have got great examples that we would incorporate the lot information, the numbers, everything here, copy of what an application would look like. We're just not at that point because it's not adopted yet. But my intention was once the rules are set, like I had mentioned to a couple of the members, that we would engage them to help with the public education, working, not all people who get into keeping chickens, and I think most of these folks can attest to it, it's a lot of work.
Right.
To keep them
Yeah.
daily harvesting, daily cleaning, the stuff that you need to do. And a lot of people who get into it may not realize it. I just had a conversation with my neighbor who got into it and didn't realize that he really has to have someone there when he wants to go fishing for 4 days. Okay, and he's a single guy. He didn't understand that. He thought it was fun. Yes, if I gone over and helped him with his chickens. So,
I just have one last question.
fine.
And then I'm sure that people want to speak too. So was there any kind of input from, I guess it's the police department, as to what kind of regulation could be put in place to make it more of an ordinance for noise that could be enforced? I mean, I think we've had this discussion where noise is noise. So it's, whether it's a rooster or somebody revving up their car or loud music or whatever. I know that a rooster is less, it's for a shorter period of time, but is there anything that they gave you as feedback that could be more of an enforceable noise ordinance for that?
No, they follow a lot of what the Illinois Criminal Code, the Motor Vehicle Code, and other codes that regulate sound and stuff. And again, it comes down to it has to be witnessed for them to write a citation. And to write the notes, yeah, they can go up and tell people, here, knock it off, do this and that, but unless it's actually witnessed, and Chief Caponegro did not, when I asked him about it, said it's one of the harder issues because they'll get a call. They'll go, well, you won't hear anything, so it doesn't get cited as an actual complaint or a case or anything like that. And again, there's some discretion on officers on certain things, but his deal was that it is a difficult ordinance for them to enforce.
Is it a possibility that you could have like 3 written, signed, complaints, something that, just to do it a different way than actually going out there and witnessing it themselves? Is there somebody, could something be written up that would be?
I'd have to defer to the city's legal counsel on that, but in 33 years of being in code enforcement and 20 plus being a director and administrator, there is no statute that allows me to write a citation against somebody without actually witnessing that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So what's the remedy now? We don't have this is not in effect yet.
Well, he's already been given a violation notice for work without permit, structure in the wrong location, and electrical work without, it's an unsafe structure because of running an extension cord across the whole backyard to run power to the building.
So if this was enacted, he would, you would have told him? He would have, I'm assuming he would have given you the diagram?
If this is in and if he was familiar with the educational piece out there, the best laid plans, okay? All the community information out there. He comes in with his Plata survey, his construction plans, what he's going to do, then we do a review. And then I go through the steps that I showed you to the type of lot he has. I check the city's utility atlas to make sure that we don't have our sanitary sewer running through that location. There's no ComEd issues, there's no NICOR issues, there's no easements that we're dealing with. That would have been a 7-day from the time of application to an answer, affirmative or not, of whether that could be built in that location. And if you remember one of the hearings, a lady testified that she and her husband went ahead and they put their coop right on the property, their rear property line, and the amount of cost and aggravation and expense and labor to move that. So what we're trying to do is eliminate that. You know, we want you to have these, but we need you to be in compliance. And we could have, all that coop had to do was come 5 feet further to the north, and that would have been in 100% compliance. And then if you ran an underground PVC for the electrical.
Just one other thing then, because I just hate restrictions, but, so this amendment that you have here, Title 5, 5-3-21, number 5. Because I know when I had birds, I didn't keep them in the coop. I let them go in the yard, and then at dusk they come in. So this says all hens shall be kept within a coop consisting of, and we can go on and on. I don't know, is that?
5 also has the provision, if you want to let them run, you have to have a 6-foot privacy fence, and a privacy fence, if you don't have one, does require a separate permit.
Okay, so number 5 does not prevent you from letting them out of the coop?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
If a person does have a rooster, how much time do they have before they come compliant with not having a rooster?
We'd be looking at the 1-year time frame.
1 year time frame.
That's the recommendation. If the ZBA concurs with that after they hear the rest of it, that's your decision. If that wants to change, that's up to your discretion. I will tell you my experience with sunset clauses, the longer they extend out, the harder it is to get compliance. Because birds get replaced, other things get replaced in that time period, and then it just seems to drag on. I've had towns where we've had to enact sunset clauses for illegal signs, you know, the old Kentucky Fried Chicken, no pun, not intentional, but they used to be on the pole and had the rotating bucket in the village of Cary. They had 5 years to take it down. On year 7, we were still fighting with them to take their sign down. So those are, so, any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So at this time, we invite the public to offer their,
He's got the sheets.
It's right there.
Okay.
can you be the keeper?
Can we swear everybody in?
Yes. So invite the public to provide the testimony, ask questions to the applicant. We have a list of people's, a sign-up list. Jen will call out the names. We'll put the 5-minute clock. We ask to be respectful of the clock. We ask to be professional, and we'll try to accommodate as best as we can. I can swear everybody in that would like to speak this time. Do you swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. And when you come up, if you would like to give your name and address for the record, would be appreciated. Yes, sir.
Just a procedural question. If someone wishes to cede their time to another speaker, can they do that?
No.
Okay, all right.
Oh, we have ways to first, which is.
Can I ask a question? If we have a question, does that impede our time if he's answering? Or does it get paused?
I don't think
we
you can ask questions of the...
We can ask, the public can ask questions to the applicant. We will try to accommodate, we'll pause the time for the applicant to answer.
Thank you.
So the attorney's back, you can answer.
Second?
The attorney's back, you can answer.
What's that?
The question
Yeah,
that
pause the time.
Which one?
about the time being paused.
Oh, if there is a
If there's a
question.
response, we can pass it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry, one procedural question. Would it be all right for us to take a 5-minute bathroom break or some sort of recess? and then
I
come right
think
back?
that's a very valid request, yes.
Thank you.
5-minute recess. All right, thank you, folks. Let's start with the public testimony. Jen?
Okay, first called up is Miss Grace Martinez.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Grace Martinez, 1213 Highland Drive. I am a chicken owner, and while, you know, Dan Peterson has some great points about, like, the structure and the zoning, we completely agree with, as far as there needs to be some sort of process to make sure that the coop is in the right place in the yards. That is not something that we are against. But some things that we do worry about as far as for the safety, which is brought up multiple times by Dan, to make sure that diseases aren't spread and registering with the Department of Ag, is this annual inspection. So chickens carry diseases that can affect other chickens. They don't affect people. So we cannot get sick from them, but birds, hence like bird flu, is highly contagious from bird to bird. So even the the Illinois Department of Agriculture, the USDA, they have guidelines set in place to make sure that we're not transmitting diseases from coop to coop. So if we're gonna have this annual inspection, we need to make sure that it has to be 3 days in between coop inspections, because the virus can actually live in our noses and get transferred from one coop to another coop. We have to have basically biohazard gear, a new set of clothes, new shoes, or at least booties on our feet. So this 5 minutes isn't feasible just with dressing up and dressing down per coop to have them annually inspected. We personally feel like it's not necessary. If we're in regulation, we're not asking other areas, we're not asking, physical inspections of dogs or of fences or other structures to be annually inspected. We don't feel like the chicken should be annually inspected either. If we need a permit just to show that, yes, we still have chickens, we can tell you guys that we still have chickens and register, but it shouldn't have a fee if there's nothing going on with it. So that's one thing that I would like to bring up. The other thing that I would like to bring up is that some of the draft items here, number 12, 13. So the sale of eggs and hens or anything related to chicken keeping is not allowed. Perfectly fine. Slaughtering of hens on property is not prohibited. Understandable. But you're telling us we can only have 20 birds. So what do we do with all these extra birds if we can't kill them and we can't sell them? We are now having to give them away, lose money on these birds that we didn't realize that they had an unexpected hatch of chicks, or when we order chicks, sometimes they order and send us more than we expect. This is some things that happen. So this is something that needs to be addressed, because if we can't sell them and we can't slaughter them, what are we supposed to do with these birds? So we're contradictory in our own draft here. And there's a lot of the reason behind banning other poultry, other fowl, ducks, geese. I mean, if we're talking numbers, there's really not much difference as far as the number-wise. If we're keeping, let's say, the 20 birds is what is proposed, why can't there be a mix of different fowl? There's no difference. I think that's all that I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim Kleinschmidt.
Jim Kleinschmidt, 410 West Clarendon Street. We both read, my wife and I have read the ordinance as written. I have no problems with any of it. I think it's very well done. There may be a few tweaks that need to be done, but for overall, I think it's very well written. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Genevieve Charest.
Hello, 5 Alton Road. Commissioners, officers, staff, citizens, everybody in attendance tonight. I would like to present you with an alternative. We understand and respect that you have been tasked with suggesting chicken changes to make life here a little better for everybody, and we agree that residents deserve to be protected from serious nuisance situations. No argument there. After the last meeting, Dan had asked a group of us chicken keepers to compile our proposed solution to this issue. We did and submitted it to Dan in, I believe, late April. Now I will give you a brief overview of our plan. And I have made copies for those of you up here. Didn't have enough for everyone in the audience, but I'm going to go over everything. If you wouldn't mind taking one and passing it down.
We have it.
They send it down anyway. We can have another copy.
Oh, here, I'm sorry, Dan.
No, I just wanted to see, because I put in all the documents.
Great.
That were in their packet from
Great.
previously.
So this is the, there were 2 exhibits, Exhibits A and B, and then the one-page proposal. I think, okay. The crux of our position, which drives our proposal, is this. We are for making things better. We just do not need to fix the things that aren't broken. The number of complaints per year, between 3 and 12, depending on your source, as opposed to the number of residents who signed a petition in support of unrestricted chicken keeping, nearly 1,400 people, proves that chicken keeping works in Prospect Heights by and large. It doesn't make sense to compare ourselves to other towns whose properties and character are so different from ours. It doesn't make sense to compare properties within Prospect Heights that can vary dramatically in size, or to compare respectful property owners with disrespectful ones. There are people in our town with flocks of 70 chickens or more who have created no issues and even go unnoticed by their neighbors. It doesn't make sense to allot each chicken a 1,000 square foot apartment. It doesn't make sense to decide for a respectful household how many chickens or eggs is enough for them. Every family is different and their reasons are personal. We know that the zoning team is small and therefore does struggle to enforce existing codes. So we don't want to add additional enforcement items that will only increase the backlog and create more frustration within the city. The proposed new items will disproportionately impact low-income families. They will be hit harder by fence and roof requirements, as by the 12-month grandfathering, and limitations on their ability to provide food for their families with meat or eggs. For these reasons, we cannot support a rooster ban or a fixed limit on the number of chickens per property, or a restriction on free-ranging birds on your own property without a 6-foot official fence encircling it, or a ban on ducks, geese, fowl, quail, or any other of the punitive restrictions proposed tonight. That being said, there are some things that we agree are not working that we think that we can address. Residents are not aware of their rights or the current laws around disturbances. Residents having an issue are not aware of their options for documenting the problem, nor do they always know the proper channels for seeking help. Some chicken keepers are unaware of the current zoning laws regarding accessory structures, which includes chicken coops, or received incorrect information in the past and built structures on good faith, and now will face a hardship in becoming compliant. There is no formal chicken keeping education being offered in Prospect Heights, even though there is in many neighboring towns that allow unrestricted chicken keeping. There are no local resources for chicken keepers who are troubleshooting issues within their flock, and there are no local resources for city government to consult when a chicken issue has been brought to their attention. So decisions are made without regard to proper animal husbandry or biology, often unwittingly. We would like to support the city in resolving these issues, and we can do it without costing the city or its taxpayers a single cent. We propose the creation of a volunteer Prospect Heights Community Chicken Board comprised of around 6 to 8 volunteer members who live in Prospect Heights and own chickens, with the oversight of a zoning board liaison to oversee them. The mission of that board is to ensure the best possible living conditions for Prospect Heights chickens and the people who live with and around them. The board's goals are to educate chicken keepers about best practices, inform current and prospective citizens regarding ordinances and issue resolution, advise chicken keepers or government when consulted with issues, and serve as a missing link in this chain of communication. To achieve these ends, we are committed to creating numerous offerings, including a written guide to addressing a chicken nuisance, which we've outlined in Exhibit A, in combination with an awareness campaign, a publication, the Community Education Guide on Chickens in Prospect Heights. A table of contents for that is provided as Exhibit B. I won't read through it. Teaching a regular Prospect Heights chicken keeping class at the public library. Providing consultative assistance to the zoning board with reported issues upon request. providing administrative support for overseeing and carrying these out, established quarterly meetings for the board with more frequent meetings when specific issues may warrant them, updates provided at the zoning board meetings when requested, consistent availability as a resource and partner for community chicken keepers, including maintaining a social media presence, maintenance of a list of local resources, including avian veterinarians and animal welfare groups, and participation in annual 4th of July parades and other city events. I want the zoning board to know that there are some very skilled professionals who have come up with this plan and who are dedicated to carrying it out. They include people who are not only knowledgeable chicken keepers, but also certified project managers, management consultants, marketers, authors, editors, engineers, certified educators, animal rescuers, volunteer organizers, and probably some things I don't even know about. These people cost a pretty penny on the open market, at least I know I do, but our expertise and our connections are being offered to the city free of charge. No solution is perfect, and we do welcome collaboration and evolution in implementing this, but we urge you to implement it, not only because it makes sense, but also because we think if you end up trying more punitive measures, they will be ineffective, they will fail, and they will necessitate a solution like ours anyway. Why not start with something positive and proactive? Why not start with something free? We want zoning, city government, law enforcement, and every individual citizen to achieve a respectful resolution here. So we are extending our hands and our good faith and our time to make it happen, and we urge you to accept. Thank you.
Thank you.
PJ Parmar.
I'm PJ Parmar, Sweet Garden Court. The only thing I have is about the oysters. I've been raising chickens for years now, and I had my own roosters, and I've been hatching my own eggs. The only thing is, I've been working on a bloodline that I specifically have now, which is, to me, is the best. If you guys take away my roosters, how am I going to keep the bloodline? That's my only thing. And I like to keep my bloodline. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Ms. Tiffany Hinton.
1011 West Wildwood Drive. I support everything Genevieve said, so I don't have to repeat any of that and what Grace said. The one thing I do want to say is I think that the proposals do need to go back to the drawing board. There is no agriculture science built into the 20 chicken piece. There's nothing there. The other thing we need to keep in mind is that I filed Freedom of Information Acts with our city police and with our dispatch office. Since January of 2023, neither one have any complaints of chickens on file. So just be aware. And then the other thing is Cats versus United States of 1967. It allows us to film or video record from a public right-of-way, give that to the police. So if there was noise, there was yelling, music, whatever, they will then issue tickets, violations, and arrest people. So we do have a way to track down some of this welfare issues, noise issues that is already allowed by the Supreme Court. That's all I have.
Thank you.
What was the citation?
Cats versus United States, 1967.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Randall Brace.
All right, Randall Brace, 300 Linden Road North. I don't even really know where to begin with this egregious overreach. It appears from the very beginning of the meetings that we've had that Mr. Peterson has had this 20 number on mind. He started the very first meeting with a list of ordinances from villages nearby, classically omitting all of the villages that have no ordinances. It's been a shopping trip and a fishing expedition from the very beginning. None of the feedback that we have provided on biosecurity has been taken into account here. None of the feedback that we have given on other alternate personal uses has been taken into account. The prohibition of slaughtering chickens, excluding meat production for your own family, is clearly in here despite feedback from the community. We have annual zoning inspections and annual fees, which will disproportionately impact lower income families, that will just bring the zoning board into your backyard. That's another fishing expedition. We don't do this for your fence. We don't do this for your garage. We don't do this for your dog kennel. This is exclusive to this case. We have already said that we are completely in agreement on ensuring that zoning is taken into effect, which is his purview. Animal welfare is not his purview. It is not his department's purview. This is an extension of his own department to collect fees and to get into people's backyards and do additional work for his department, which is understaffed, and to justify more jobs. That's my view on this whole fishing expedition. And as it comes to, let's see, I'm sorry, I had a lot of notes. For example, I have 70 chickens in my yard this year. I slaughtered 50 chickens. They're in my freezer. I did not sell them. Every time we come up with a number, that Dan's 20 number comes up, he insists that any number greater than 20 is for agriculture purposes, for sale, and does not include personal use. We started from the very beginning, him assuming that 20 chickens makes 20 eggs a day. His own words. Completely false. We have spent these meetings trying to educate the board, trying to educate Mr. Peterson on what actually it means to be a chicken owner, which he has never been. What it actually means to move to this village, because these are our rights that we're enshrined, and everybody in this village has embraced it. We moved from a neighboring village to this village for this very purpose. And now we're gonna restrict it, because why? 3 complaints a year? We already have the zoning board, we already have the zoning laws on effect. We're offering free registration, paying the zoning fee to have somebody come out, and now we're telling us, including members of this board that were told by the village that you didn't need a permit for a coop, that there's no remedy, that you have to move your coop, that there's no remedy to get a variance fast-tracked or to do anything that gives a resolution because of this new hardship. Where do I go after that? The number of birds, as another board member mentioned, as for covering accessory structure, we don't need a number of birds limit. There's a welfare number of birds limit that needs to be taken care of to maintain sanity, to sanitation, to maintain the welfare of the animals. They could be very small hens that are this big, you know, like 8 inches tall. That's a valid size hen. Another hen is 18 inches tall. That space that we're allowing by the accessory structure takes care of the number limits. Completely unnecessary. Who's gonna be out there counting them? Every annual inspection, we're gonna come count chickens? These are just creating headaches and new rules that don't need to be there. They've never been here. I think board members here have been shocked to find out how many chickens are in their village. They didn't know it. They didn't know how many friends and family they had in the village, or members of their kids' sports teams have chickens. That is a testament to how unobtrusive they are. That is an absolute testament. That if we can find out that somebody has 70 chickens and nobody ever complained, that's never been an issue in this village, then why are we going through these hoops to create the issue? We're creating work where none is needed. See if I missed anything. Temporary fences are good enough for dogs, but not chickens. We need a 6-foot fence to keep chickens in a yard. We don't need a fence to keep a dog in a yard. So my neighbor's pit bull can come bite my child. Yes, that's an issue. We're all worried about our children being bitten by a stray dog. Yes, also, just like a chicken wandering down the street that escaped, a dog sometimes escapes. These issues are already covered under our code. The one last thing, I'm sorry, there is one misnomer that was given earlier that I forgot to cover earlier on. The commissioner stated there's nothing in our code handling chickens and poultry. 912 of animal care, he misstated, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit legitimate commerce and poultry for agriculture or food purposes. Not and food purposes, or food purposes. So nothing in this section should be construed to prohibit it. So me producing chickens on my property and having them for meat, not prohibited. Food purposes. Me having chickens on my property for eggs for me and my family, not prohibited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Katie King.
Yes, Camp McDonald. I am not a chicken owner, but I primarily wanted to address the proposed banning of roosters because I think that that is a very dramatic reaction to, I'm really not sure the amount of complaints that we've gotten over the years. Again, anywhere from 3 to 12. I think we were told a handful during the last meeting. Given the amount of chicken owners within the city, estimated to be 80 to 100, that seems like it is going to hurt more people than it is going to help any potential complaints. I would really be interested in finding some sort of alternative to an all-out ban. Maybe we could do something where it is a three written complaints and then an actual violation. I'd like to explore something like that rather than stomping on something that doesn't seem like it is a problem right now. Thank you.
Ms. Nikki Mullen.
West Kenilworth, and I agree with the aforementioned comments by Grace Martinez, Tiffany Hinton, Genevieve Shure, and Randy Brace, as well as, I'm sorry I didn't catch her name, who just spoke. I have a lot of issues with this. I think the first thing I want to say, just to make sure I get through my time, is there are so many issues with the way this proposal, the way that it's written, that I really encourage the board to say that this needs to go back to the drawing board and actually have either animal science people involved, actual chicken owners involved in the writing of this. So now I'm going to go through a few of the things that I have a huge problem with, aside the fact that this is incredibly far-reaching and way more regulation than we need. And also, Mr. Peterson said these are reasonable regulations. They are absolutely not, and I do not believe they're beneficial for the entire community. In fact, I think it would have a lot of people not moving to Prospect Heights anymore. Most of us did move to Prospect Heights, as Randy stated, because of our chicken ownership ability. Okay, so with the roosters, I also think we could definitely adapt a 3 strikes you're out policy, either having written complaint or video complaint, which we know is allowed after Ms. Hinton spoke. There's definitely things we can do. Actually, one of my neighbors said, why don't you have a rooster, Nikki? I love the sound that they make. Some people don't like dogs barking. It is truly up to the person. I love the sound of roosters. I do not have any myself. I don't see the reason for prohibiting ducks, for example. That seems like another arbitrary thing in here. The annual inspection is another unneeded regulation. I do agree, again, I just want to reiterate this with what Grace said. I understand the one thing that I think we've all agreed with Mr. Peterson from the beginning is the fact that there was a miscommunication with permits regarding coops. Many of us called and checked before we put our coop structures up. If we were told if there was no concrete being poured, then it was fine. We are okay moving our coop. If that was incorrect information that we received 4 years ago, we will move our coop. That, I don't think many of us are disagreeing with that. We are fine registering, you know, our chicken ownership with the city or with the state. Do we need annual inspections? Absolutely not. Do do annual inspections of pools and sheds and stuff? No, we don't need it for our hens unless there's a complaint, right? It also does say on here, 2D, permit is required prior to buying chickens. What Dan stated in testimony, it sounded like that was not needed to get a permit before buying chickens, so I don't know if there needs to be clarification there. Again, that seems incredibly far-reaching. There's a typo in 5. It says all hens shall be kept within a coop consisting or a covered enclosure. I think he meant a coop consisting of a covered enclosure, so just another issue there. And then I have a huge issue with the fence, with this fence. So we have a fence around our yard. It is not a 6-foot privacy fence. When we go out into our yards, sometimes we let our chickens outside of their enclosed chicken area, and they do not bother our neighbors. We do this, there are a lot of good purposes for our yard. The chickens forage, they get ticks. Some people don't like ticks. They get bugs, they get mosquitoes. They help aerate the grass. Lots of great uses for your chickens in your yards. They do not bother our neighbors. So a 6-foot privacy fence would only make us more distant from our neighbors and have more of a less neighborly, homey feel in our city. So I have a huge problem with that. Just for example, if you want to look up North Barrington, they allow you to free range your chickens if you're out there with them. That I don't think that's necessary because chickens don't fly very far, and you can clip their wings so they don't fly at all. So I don't think that's necessary, but that would be something else. And again, that goes to an income disparity, because I know my family doesn't have $20,000 to put up a privacy fence, nor do we want to. I have 16 seconds left. I don't even know where to go. Okay. It's easier to take care of chickens than it is dogs, so maybe the fee for that should be $10, like our dogs. Extension cords, I'm really confused on that because we have extension cords up for our Christmas lights, so if we're not allowed to have extension cords in our yards, I'm a little confused on that as well. So this needs to go back to the drawing board, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean Popa.
I'm Dean Papa, 6 Alton Road. Actually, this is all new to me. I've never been to any meeting like this. I really don't know nothing about chickens. I came here because I just thought, I didn't think it would be so formal and everything. And I like what both part people have to say. I think hopefully you can find that blend to the solution. The main reason I came here is we have some people that have chickens on our street, and we have a very bad smell from them constantly. Not constantly, like 3 times last year, I'm continually reaching out to the guy and telling him, it smells, it smells. So it happened again this year. My only concern is the smell. I could care less if you have chickens and you want chickens, I have no problem with it. But what do I do? What's my recourse? Who do I call? Is it a police call? Is it a city call? I don't know what to do, and I don't want to be the guy babysitting this thing for it either. And my neighbors, I have a lot of neighbors I talk to feel the same way. You know, we shouldn't have that to deal. Now, what I've read before, an article someone put out was, if they're not taking care of the chickens properly, then there can be a smell issue. If it smells, they're not taking care of the chickens properly, is actually how it was worded, which probably makes sense. So, for one thing I'm for is probably the inspections. I think it's a good thing. You know, I'm an outsider, I don't have chickens, I won't own chickens, I got nothing against them. But I think that's a good thing if you have to do them once a year. Why not? Things can change, environments can change. The shed, the coop can change, anything can happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, you know, overall, that's really my only thing is the smell. What do I do to, you know, keep telling him? That's an issue, and it's bad. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Sarah Meyer.
Hi, Sarah Meyer, 504 Grego Court. I agree with everyone else who has chickens. I also want to say thank you, Council, for the questions you asked back and listening and just asking some really good questions. And I can tell you guys are thinking about this as you're reading through this. I just wanted to, it was pointed out a few things, but the annual inspections, I don't think they are needed to have someone come every year. A dog isn't getting inspected. And then the other thing is permits. I looked at this year's permits. The dog permit is 24 for a new dog, 12 for a renew, and yet it is 90, and I understand that is for the permit for the coop. Which is different because if you get a permit now, I think it is a little different, which is nice to see that it's lower. But 12 for a renew. But why is it 40 for chickens? I think that needs to be looked into consideration and really thought of for every year after. The fence was brought up, and I thought that was a great thing. Chickens, you can, as it was said, can trim. I have had to actually break up a dog fight in our front yard. Both owners had their leashes. We're not talking about dogs, but if you're gonna say we need a 6-foot privacy fence and that is because we're encroaching on our neighbors, then that needs to be looked at. Dogs need to have a 6-foot privacy fence. So, and that you cannot clip a dog so they can't get out. Our neighbor's dog dug under, killed one of our chickens, which can happen. We love our neighbors. They'll write a letter even, they like our chickens. But that needs to be looked at to say we have to spend, you know, thousands of dollars for a privacy fence. And why privacy fence? Like, why do we have to fence if chickens, we can actually clip them, they cannot fly over? Dan even said, we're not concerned about chickens out during the day. He said, chickens have come out, so that's a contradiction. We're not really worried about that. Any animal can get out. There's cats that roam our neighborhood. You know, I mean, they're animals. They're gonna be animals. I understand dogs are gonna fight, but I'm not really worried if I walk by a chicken that they might attack my kid. A dog is definitely gonna likely more attack my kid than a chicken. So I appreciate your insight, and I agree with everything else that was said about just re-looking at this and what is really best for everyone, not just those who have chickens, not just those who don't. And with the other point, as I'm looking back at my notes, Dan pointed out that why annual checks need to happen. Well, safety checks. And he pointed it to rental properties, and I don't know if that's a really great correlation. That's safety for people, and I get that, but chickens are not kids. They're not living in our houses. And so there is some things, but if people are doing the right things, then having like a 3 strikes or some other way to do that, I think just needs to be re-looked at how we do this in this community and not changing so drastically from what we've had before. Thank you for your time tonight and for listening.
Thank you.
Ms. Debbie Sheffer.
Hello, everyone. I didn't really plan on speaking today, but I have been in Prospect Heights since '92, and I started having chickens in 2004, and it was just a little coop and a fun thing to do. And through the years, it's brought a lot of joy to the family, and some senior citizens come by, and the Girl Scouts and things like that. So I do raise the chickens and for eggs, and I give them to the ladies that I work with. So it's kind of a wholesome, fun thing. And I don't know if you've ever had a glass of beer on a Friday night and you're sitting in your yard and you can watch the chickens peck. It's a really nice, fun thing to do. It's very relaxing. It's calming. I do appreciate all you people who have spoke up this evening about what it means to have chickens, have a coop. We do want them to be safe. We do need some guidelines, but to have being watched upon, I don't think is really necessary. But I do think you should reevaluate some of the points that these fine people have made tonight, because I think they were very good. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Elena Melos. Okay. Mr. Eric Strohmeyer.
Hi, good evening. I'm Eric Strohmeyer, 402 West Wheeler Road. Most of what I want to say has been already said, but I just want to kind of go back to the beginning when this all started. I think everybody just wants to be a good citizen and a proper chicken keeper, and we understand there's some bad actors and maybe some guidelines need to be put in place to get rid of some of the bad actors. And but you know, the rules, you know, this 4 pages draconian rules. It's like running a business. You know, it's a little overreaching. So that's all I have to say. Everything else already said. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Miss Gina Zalewski.
Hi, Gina Zalewski, 15 Robert Avenue. I just want to say that I have been a chicken owner for 10 years. There's never been a single complaint from a neighbor about my property, about smell, about noise. We care for our chickens. We love them. They're pets to us. You're also not going to hear any complaints about my dogs being stinky or too loud, because I treat them as I would my pets. Exactly the same. And you're not going to hear about my kids being stinky or too loud either. It's all the same in our house. I do want to say that I was at our initial meeting where we were having an open discussion, and there were lots of questions being asked, and we packed this place, and we had a lot of chicken owners giving input and respectfully correcting misinformation and bringing things up that we thought would help move us in the right direction. And I feel that this proposal didn't take anything of what we said to heart, because from that first meeting, from that first discussion, we did have a number of 20 chickens locked down. We did have permits and all these big words coming at us without taking into everything that we had inputted and everything that we had to connect to it, to come up with a proposal that makes sense for you guys and all of us and all of our birds. So I think that this is just a huge jump from where we should be. I do urge you guys to talk about this and go back and take a new proposal, because this is just so far from where it should be for respectable, loving chicken owners that we are. I also didn't hear much conversation about the welfare being of the birds themselves, of the welfare of the birds themselves. It was just about numbers and size. 20 birds can still be treated poorly, so we should be mostly worried about the welfare of our animals. And I understand a stink problem is a problem. Chickens that make too much noise, chickens that, you know, people have a smell issue with, those are things. 3 strikes, there's a ticket. And I think everyone can respectfully agree that that's how law works, and we all want to be law abiding, and we want all that to work. I have one question under the fees, under B. It says a hen permit used by the city, blah, 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 $90 shall be required, and then a renewal of $40. It says a hen permit, and does that mean, because it's not clear to me, is it $90 per hen initially? Or is it a one-time $90 and then a one-time $40 annually on return? I just want to make sure that's on the record is clear, because it doesn't read that way to me, that it's super clear. So I want to make sure that we have that out there. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's the end of the list?
No, it's the Becky Denise.
Right.
I signed downstairs.
Okay, do you need to get sworn in?
I did.
Do you swear that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I'm Becky Fiscone. I've come here every meeting. So I live at 213 South Maple Lane. I was born in the house I'm in, so I've been here for 38 years. It's a long time. I'm getting old. I wasn't going to talk tonight because I'm trying not to let my emotions get the most of me, but I am very frustrated. Dan, very. I'm frustrated because we've put, to have chickens, to have any animal, child, we put so much time planning, money. I mean, it brings us joy, and it's not for everyone, but the people here that have been doing this for years, it's never been an issue in the city, and it really frustrates me that we're the people, most of the people in the city of Prospect Heights are okay with having hens and roosters, and one person since the beginning, Dan, has been against it. And it really irritates me because every time we let him speak, we gave a very, I thought, complimentary action. We listened and we heard. And I feel like you guys, not you guys, but you know, I feel like we're not being heard anymore. I feel like we've never been heard, and so it's very frustrating to me that we've given all these resources and we've spent time. My phone's been going off nonstop for hours on end, and it's like we're talking to a wall. It's the same rules that were brought up in his head at the first meeting, and it's really disappointing, especially coming from somebody, one person that isn't even a resident of Prospect Heights. And I will promise you this, my future will not be in Prospect Heights if my rights are taken away, because that's the reason I'm here. And if the people aren't heard, I can't live somewhere like that. That's it.
Thank you. If there's anybody else that would like to speak, now would be the time. All right, if there isn't any. We can have, we're going to keep the hearing open, but we will have a discussion here amongst the commissioners. Second, please. But not the question from the public.
If they ask questions that you wrote down, if you want them to answer, you can answer.
Got it, okay. So we can address any of the concerns that we've heard from you with Dan at this time and provide our, kind of our opinion or our testimony, our discussion. So I can start. I mean, the city's been dealing with these chickens for a number of years. We've had chickens in the city for 50 plus 60 years. The more we dig into it and the more aspect of zoning and so I feel that there is, and I think that I've heard from most of the public, is that there is a need for some kind of zoning rules just so that, even just to make things clear. For example, I wasn't aware that the city did not allow chickens, but the police code did. So this is confusing to me, but I'm not in this, I mean, never, prior to this meeting, chickens have been not on my radar, so I didn't pay much attention to chickens. My only view is that if it has somewhat worked for the past 50 plus years, maybe we can make it work for another a year or 2 years or 3 years with very limited zoning changes that might allow us to to weed out the bad apples and to make it. We do want to make it better for the entire community, but listening to the testimony, it seems like the majority of the chicken community is extremely well educated and very passionate about doing the right things with the chickens. We definitely want to have all the other residents enjoy the city as well. I mean, the fact of the rural environment, it's not only because of the chickens, it's because of the big yards, and we, like to sip wine in the backyard and listen to the bird or listen to whatever, nothing, or look at grass grow. We should be able to enjoy that. Maybe less is more in our case, just because if we put in too many restrictions, it's difficult to take them out of the code, out of the zoning code. That's kind of my quick summary. Open to the other commissioners for their comments.
So, a few things. I'm not a chicken owner either, but I'm trying to sympathize with people that have chickens. I do want to kind of defend Dan here. Dan's tasked with a very tough job. I know a few of you guys have said, Dan. This isn't just Dan. You guys have to understand that. Dan has a bunch of better things to do than put together this. This is he's been tasked with this. He's trying to do the best job he can. And he's given us something to look at. I think we all can agree that this isn't a vendetta against chickens and Dan. I'm sure Dan doesn't have vendetta against chickens or anyone in this town. So that's why, from what I know of Dan, and Dan is not built like that. Well, we do have great points in chickens. There's two concerns I have. roosters crowing in the morning, which we have not had a solution with. Besides, you guys have to understand, a rooster crowing at 4 in the morning, there is no solution in place for that. And a resident has a right to be able to sleep at 4 in the morning. I've heard the motorcycles, the lawnmowers, and all the comparisons. People don't run their motorcycles at 4 in the morning. People don't mow their lawns at 4 in the morning. Roosters typically crow at this time, I believe, or all through the day. That's not a valid comparison. So I think we have to come up with a solution for them.
How about the cicadas that were all night day? Did you get a lot of complaints?
That's not a valid comparison.
We have
Just not.
we have to try to keep it to the standards of the hearing, because otherwise this will get out of control and we will.
It's just frustrating.
I understand.
The 4 a.m. thing, like every rooster has an alarm clock set for 4.
We've heard the testimony.
So I think that's a valid concern. I appreciate the guidance that you guys are looking to do. I appreciate coming up with solutions. I haven't heard a great solution for that. We've heard that there's only been 3 complaints. You guys have to understand, people don't like to call the police on their neighbors and become bad neighbors. You cannot honestly believe there's only been 3 people affected in the last 3 years about this. We had a gentleman here who's never called the police. He told you he has a bad smell he's been dealing with for years. His neighbors have. Just because they don't call doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So a smell is a concern for me too. Those are 2 things that I as a commissioner are concerned about. How do we mitigate that? Okay, the 20 chicken thing, I think we have to do a little more homework on that. I don't know how much that relates to smell. I don't know how that number does affect or not, but I believe that we have to look at that. I am concerned about the annual inspections. I think we talked about the little off record. But this is a work in progress. But there's 2 concerns as a commissioner I have that I would love for people to have solutions for that. If you have them, great, we'll listen, but it has to be a reasonable solution. But I do believe a neighbor has the right, if they don't want to hear it at 4 in the morning, they should have a vehicle in place to stop that. I think a neighbor has a right, if they have a constant smell coming from the neighbor. A smell is, you can't call a police officer, hey, there's a smell here, how do we enforce this? A smell can be to one person a bad smell, and not to another person. It's very subjective. So that is another concern I have. So those are the 2 things I think I want to say. I do have a question for Mr. President. Can we ask some questions here?
Yes, absolutely.
Why, what Grace had brought up, why limit just to chickens? Why not ducks as well? What was there like other fowl?
In review of what was said, I think that we had a couple people that in an earlier meeting said they had them, but most people was dealt with chickens. Also with the task of researching what other municipalities, and it wasn't just the 20-something that I did here, but without having best practices by a stated organization like the Illinois Food Department of Agriculture, the USDA, that we in municipal government go to the next level is look at what other municipalities have done, and to be real honest, not the ones that I've reviewed, and there's in excess of 30 that I looked at, all of them prohibited everything other than chickens. So is there a place where ducks, geese, and turkeys may be allowed? Possibly, but in review of the ordinances that are out there, which is the basis of what it is, that's where it came from. So again, it's a point that, it's not a Dan Peterson issue. If the commission believes that's appropriate, that's fine. We just had a place to start with when I was tasked with drafting the ordinances.
And then I have a few questions. So one, what's to the point if let's say they do have I want to call it a litter chicken, but let's say a series of chickens that they do, how do they get rid of them if we can't sell them? Why not be able to sell hens if they have, let's say, if there's a stated amount?
Well, we had discussion, I believe Ms. Martinez had stated that she takes roosters from other towns. You've taken roosters.
The one that I have.
There was someone who taken, rescued others. There's other things. That is a valid question. you know, I think people had said that during that discussion that hens and chickens can have about a 12-year lifespan. Okay, we understand that they aren't all going to be producing eggs for that whole time. That was stated here. You know, I don't know what the answer is to that question, but again, how do you, you know, what there has to, looking at the number of birds and looking at the how do you dispose of them, I don't have a good answer. You know, that's one that was not in my discussions with folks even brought up. Mr. Brace had said that, you know, when he takes he takes them to a processing place. Okay, is there other places to do it? Well, I'm sure quite a few chickens have been slaughtered in their properties without the city knowing what's going on, because the person who did it probably did it responsibly, cleaned up, didn't cause an issue. The issue is if it is an issue and it's not on the books, then how do you prevent it? But again, I will be honest, I don't have a good answer for that.
And then I do think we need to define coops better, because I understand you have a structure, but if they have a chicken run, that's part of it, it becomes part of the square footage. But if you have a fenced area, that's part of it, then they don't have to have the fenced area, so that the whole yard becomes part of the chicken. I think that got to get defined better. I do think that the way I read this, the folks that did say a dog's allowed to run out, if you have a fenced coop, the chicken can stay within it, then you don't need the fenced yard. But if you don't have a fenced coop, then you gotta have a privacy fence. That's how I read it. Is that correct?
That was the intent of it.
Correct. Okay.
We were also, it was stated at a previous meeting that, especially with the temporary or the mobile coops, that they put up temporary fencing around where they put that mobile coop. That is perfectly fine. That they're being responsible chicken keepers by trying to maintain their birds in an area where they don't become free range. So it's just those folks that, you know, where the birds are not confined to the yard and can become a problem outside of the property in which they're residing at.
Yeah, Commissioner Patel, I think they have to be, I don't think you could just leave them in your yard, because at night, I know in my situation, they would be eaten by, you know, they have to have a place where they go when it's secure. And they normally will automatically go in there at dusk. They just march right in.
In the coop, you're talking about?
In the coop. Well,
Yeah.
either in the coop or the area. They can roost in the summer.
I think with the way this draft is written, if you don't have a coop or a fenced off area, you can have just a fenced yard, a 6-foot privacy fenced yard, if you choose not to do that. So you have an option of either one.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I didn't read that.
That's how I.
And again, this is hard because the way the existing definition reads, an accessory structure is anything. Okay, so it was a first shot at defining, looking at others. But if we look back at that picture of the coop that I showed earlier, you know, to me, that is the accessory structure, and that is got coop structure where they can go in and roost and spend the night, get their food. In inclement weather, they got a safe place to be. They're protected and screened an area that's more than one. That to me is the structure. If a person wants to let them out during the day and let them run, we're looking at how are they looking at contain them within the yard. Okay, it was never going to be, well, you got, if someone can put them all in their yard, they get the whole yard to count to that square footage. We're looking at what do you do in those evenings? What do you do at night to protect them? Because we did hear that during the earlier discussion. So in looking at other ordinances and looking at how to try and structure that to allow people to have a safe structure for their animals, or their chickens, and still provide some way to address the code requirements of the 200 square feet. So again, if there's better definitions, I'd be open to them. You know, and what I've looked at, they're all written pretty similarly.
With current code, a coop cannot be bigger than 200 square feet?
That is correct.
I'm wondering how are 70, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions to the audience.
Well,
the gentleman.
He can,
Okay.
And the thing is one of the things is, you can have a mobile coop, but when you look at the way that the code is written, that's been on the books since 1977, that coop still counts, the structure on the trailer, on the mobile coop, does count as a structure. We're not saying it has to be restricted. So then the question comes, is that under 200 square feet? Is it not 200 square? Then there need to be some changes, but the way our code is written, because it counts as a structure, it still must meet the 200 square feet. Then if he puts his mobile coop out in the yard and he puts his temporary fence or however he contains them within his yard and controls them, that's going to be up to the owner. At the end of the day, looking at the requirements within the zoning code for the structures.
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you for putting this together. I think the time and expertise that is shown in here is mind-boggling. And I think that the fact that you would be willing to do that is awesome. And you can do this way better than we can. So I would like to just focus on what we can do best. And that would be just, again, trying to locate the chicken coop in a spot on the property that isn't going to be offensive to the neighbors and would be in keeping with accessory structures in general. So I think that if we can focus on, like the chairman said, on kind of a minimum amount of guidelines moving forward, and the ones that we can have the most effect in, getting permits, making sure that it's in the right location, the right size. I think that's where we should put our energy right now, and maybe reevaluate it and see how this, this community board, if they're willing to get this up and running, see how that works, to get people educated on how to care for the chickens so that the odor and the the fact that they're contained and well cared for. I mean, they can do that a lot better than we can. And I have to say that I probably would be happy with just the permit initially, and I don't think we should burden the city with have to do annual inspections unless there's a change in the structure or a complaint, which I think is what you would do for any other accessory structure then. So I think minimizing the regulations, I think, would be a good thing right now, reevaluating it as it goes forward, and definitely clarifying the description of a coop so it's clear for everybody. And I think that's everything I wanted to say. And the fees, we should make it consistent. I don't know if a privacy fence is, I don't think we should even talk about fencing, really. We should talk about the accessory structure. So that's my initial reaction.
Related to the question on fees, it's not a per bird fee.
I think the annual fee was what was being questioned versus, chickens versus dogs.
Is it I think permits, a permit for an accessory structure is more than $50. Okay, sheds that the $50 is that's what we do for a plan review. It's a discounted plan review because what we're doing is looking at the structure at hand. So will take some time to do that. So it was a minimal review fee one time, because we're only going to be looking at the structures once. After that, it's the zoning compliance component is where the $40, and that's, again, those fees are the minimums in our existing codes. We weren't creating new fees for this, just applying the fees that are already in code to this.
Yeah, and I think
defined
that
structures.
upfront for the permit, I think those are accurate, but it's just that if you're going to charge them something each year, it should be consistent with, you know, other animal owners, and that's the only thing.
Okay. Which again, this was a starting point.
Yep.
Well, I think also, the owner of 2 dogs, they pay per dog. We're not saying per chicken.
Correct.
It's a flat fee. It's $40. I think it's hard to say, to make them, like, dogs are $24, I think somebody said. I have 2 dogs, I pay $40 a year. I think equivalent of $4 for as many, up to 20 chickens as the proposal says, it seems reasonable based on what you pay per dog. That's mine.
Are there any other questions that the commissioners have specifically for the applicant, so that we could have all our testimony cleared up, and then we can close and we can deliberate afterwards?
Can we ask the audience questions? So, Randall, I know you had said something about, Dan was very specific on cities that allow or minimize chickens, but you said there are cities, you didn't mention cities that,
Yes.
which cities are you referring to?
In the first meeting, I gave a list of 15 or 20 cities.
Are any neighboring to us within 20 miles?
Chicago has no restrictions on the number of chickens you can have. The city of Chicago has no restrictions on the number of chickens you can have.
Okay.
They don't have half-acre lots, I hate to tell you.
Any suburbs?
There are suburbs that have it. I had a list in the first meeting. I can either deliver that and email you the list that I had quickly found. There were another dozen or so local suburbs that had no restrictions. So, I mean, if I can speak to one other point that Mr. Patel made, I think the proposal that we gave in dealing with accessory structures, maintaining that, trying to get everyone in compliance, also dealt with trying to get remedy for people with bad actors. The registration, now the village knows who has chickens. So if there's a complaint, oh, there is a chicken there. You know, like we have some correlation. We also proposed putting together a chicken owner guide and a chicken complaint like flow sheet. Like if you have a smell issue, who do you complain to? Like the one gentleman who left complained. Totally valid. I wouldn't know either, right? Like I'm not going to call the police because I smell something. So we tried to provide, as form of education, a guideline both for chicken owners and for people living next to chickens on how to deal with these issues, such as the video issue. So like you brought up chicken crowing at 4 in the morning. Again, that's legal to record that and submit that. So you can record your neighbor having chicken as long as you're not imposing on their right to privacy that chicken crowing at 4 in the morning, creating a noise disturbance. So I think there is remedy to all of these issues if we deal with the accessory structure and clarify in this chicken ownership type of flyer in the village website and education in the community that it is already covered under accessory structure, but just to clarify, because there is confusion for sure, right? So as we've said from the beginning, we think that the laws that exist cover the issues that we have in this village. Coming up with better ways to remedy them or to address them and to see them through to a resolution for our neighbors that have a problem actor or have illegal structures that need to be remedied. We've been trying to work in good faith this entire time on providing better solutions that don't create onerous regulation. And I think if you take the time to read our proposals, they cover those issues that you've raised about noise and complaint and rooster crowing and 3-strike proposals, and all of that is covered. It's just clarifying how we're going to work as a community to solve the issue in a less government, big government kind of mentality. So that's just, again, I'm pontificating as I love to do so, sorry.
But if the nature of a rooster is to crow at 4 in the morning?
Yeah, I think that's with the 4-strike though, right? We talked about like the crow collars, like she has a bachelor flock. If you have all roosters, they don't actually crow. It's a dominance thing. So again, as part of the education here, there are solutions. It's just that, and I understand Obviously, we spent a lot of time getting to know our chickens, doing our research before owning them, learning as we own them, that a lot of members on the board in the village maybe don't have. So I understand there's a disconnect between the knowledge that a chicken owner has and the knowledge of a layman. And it can't be easily rectified in this forum, right? But if you have a noise complaint and there's recordings and you catch this and you're giving 3-strike remedies, we can deal with the rooster, the bad actor rooster, the really bad rooster. You know, we can deal with that issue as a community, I think, in less onerous ways. All right. Any other questions, sir?
Thank you.
Anything about meat birds? No? And like you asked about the mobile coop.
Oh, besides your coop.
Yeah, that was apparently I'm misinterpreting the ordinance as well, the zoning ordinance. And so, you know, I wouldn't be able to do that potentially the way I was doing it, and also keep my hens as in their accessory structure. You know, that's, again, education that I'm getting right now that I would put in practice going forward. It's just that was how I was doing it. That's how I was able to keep them both.
Wait, what? I didn't hear that. So you
I
just
had a mobile chicken tractor that I just moved around my yard with my meat birds, and so I had my egg-laying hens in my permanent coop, and then I had like a little mobile thing that I dragged around the yard.
But you can do that if it's within the.
No, because it's like covered, has walls, is enclosed. This is the confusion, and so it counts as another accessory structure.
But I mean, you could do it if you were allowed another structure, if that one wasn't up to the 200.
Yeah,
if
like
it was 80.
If the coop specifics in the code weren't there, I think, I'll give you a second, then if it wasn't saying that you could only have one coop and that it would be 2 accessory structures, I would have to get a permit to have that accessory structure, and it would be limited to 80 square feet.
Right.
But potentially it is
But
possible
you could
if the other restrictions that are in this current code don't spell that out as an exclusion by name.
And the hen limit.
So,
Yeah, and the hen limit.
Randall's correct, you know, because of the existing limitation on numbers and the specific types of structures that are listed in the code, the 2 areas he could get the extra square footage would be the larger 200 for the one and an 80 for the other.
Right.
But then that limiting the numbers, and he's correct in that assessment.
Could you have 3 chicken coops?
That's not the way the current number.
If you were.
The zoning code is very specific on how the square footage for the structures are delineated, because it's dictated by the number of structures. And there's no, we've had people in zoning cases ask, well, if I don't do 200 square foot shed, can I get a 1,000 square foot detached garage? That's not how the code is written.
Okay, so, but I understand. So you have a house and you have an attached garage, so you have no accessory structures.
Correct.
So you could have a 200 accessory structure, you could have an 80 accessory structure, but you have the option of having 3. So what could the third one be then? It could still, you can go
could
up
get
to
another
5% of your lot coverage, correct?
That's 720, but once you get over the 200 square feet, it's defined as a garage. So if they chose to do a third 200, I believe technically, and I'd have to double check the code to verify for fact, but if you're limited to 3 structures.
Right.
A 200 to 280, because it does spell out.
Right.
You're underneath the 5%, but
Right.
you're capped at the number of structures.
Okay, but so you could do one up to the 5%? Correct?
No.
No, wait, okay.
No.
So all right, and so I understand it's not a garage, so it would have to be 200 or less for the second and third structure?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Would it have to be less than, so is the second structure capped at 80?
Hold on a second, let me pull up that section. I don't want to misquote here. Excuse me.
We have Dan just look it up, and he had a question right there.
Well, we're not going to allow questions. We're done.
I actually have a question.
Okay, then you have a question for him.
Well, he has his hand up.
Okay.
While he's looking that up, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, about
The question is directed towards you.
I'll have to ask you a question.
Oh, okay.
So you said you have a rooster that has a bloodline that you're interested in keeping.
Yes.
If your rooster's crowing every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, what are you doing to stop it?
I don't hear them. That's why I
But
came
you're
off.
not
Here's
into
the thing.
Yeah.
I had roosters for years. I asked all my neighbors. We live in half an acre. None of our houses on top of each other. So my neighbors are telling me, they're like, we don't hear them. I asked them, I said, hey, I got these roosters in the coop. Do you guys hear them? No, because they're locked up at night. So 4 in the morning, you barely hear them outside.
So what
During
if,
the day,
what,
if you're walking around, yeah, you can hear them.
what if I am a neighbor that hears it every day at 1 in the morning? What are you doing?
If I get a neighbor, I'll put a cover around his neck. There's ways to control the noise. But at the moment, I don't have any neighbors that's complaining. And one of my things was, when you guys talk about complaints, it gotta be from a valid neighbor. It can't be 5 houses down and the guy said, oh yeah, I hear him. That's about a mile away. I say, no way. So there has to be regulations with the complaints. How far can someone complain? And it gotta be valid. It's like, okay, I live at Tule. Okay, it was a guy out of 5 got in court to complain. Okay, that's valid. It's 1 house over it. But not the guy that's half a mile away, because, you know, he can't hear it. So that's one of my things. And there's ways to control the noise.
Thank you.
To go back to Commissioner Sayward's question, per 5-3-8, it's very specific on the types of structures and the square footage and the numbers. And that prohibits the, you know, multiplying. You cannot have 5 200 square foot accessory structures. You're still at the 5%, but now you would more than exceed how the buildings are lined up.
So you can have one for the 200 and the other buildings may not exceed 80.
So basically you could get 3 buildings at 200 and
280 and
160, so you could get, what, 360 square feet of at a quick analysis.
Yep, okay,
Just a real
got it.
quick glance, that's how that reads.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Dan, the maximum is 360?
Well, if you read the definitions, the regulations, you get the 1 at 200, if shed 2 and 3 then could not be more than 80 each.
So, because I'm just trying to do the math, so that would be, if you had 70, that's 5 feet, each bird has only 5 feet? Is that what I don't know if I'm confused, or, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I can't answer that question.
Is that what it is?
I had 80 square feet. The recommendations for meat bird chickens by the USDA is 1.5 square foot per bird, and I was over that for meat birds.
1.5
For meat bird production. For meat bird production. They live, again, I know I've said this in a previous meeting, meat birds live only 8 to 12 weeks total from hatch to finish. So this is not a long-term like storage facility. You know, they're small most of that time until the last several weeks.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
When someone registers with the, I'm sorry, when someone registers, they're gonna have to register with the USDA, did you say, in the beginning? Are they gonna give you that was 1.5 and whatever?
They don't have that specification. You know, when I was doing the research, and we looked a little bit at meat birds, but because of the volume, and everyone that I spoke to and my counterparts, they looked at that as getting more into an agricultural production operation. And yes, Mr. Brace was correct on the agriculture for legitimate agriculture for commerce and food production shall not be limited. However, we still have zoning guidelines that had to be looked at, you know, in terms of the structures and stuff. So they did look at that part of the code. But I had not seen in any of the research that I did those types of recommendations for types of hens, you know, the difference in egg laying. We do know that when I did look, there's at least 25 different varieties at a minimum that I saw, and it could be more, of egg laying type hens. Okay, we're not gonna sit here and pick and choose which type of hens. We don't wanna do that. You know, that's not our realm. But trying to find a standard was very difficult, so that's where we came up with reviewing what ordinances were on the books already in other towns to make a decision, a recommendation.
Okay, if there are no other questions at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to close public hearing number ZBA 24-01 PUD at 10 p.m.
I'll make that one. I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Machewski.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye. So at this time, there's number of questions regarding the language of the amendment, of the proposed text amendment. We could propose changes to the text amendment. There would be a lot of, we propose changes to amendment as written. We can ask Director Peterson if you wish to revise the.
I'm sorry, I missed you officially closed the public hearing, correct?
Yes.
My thought was.
So there can be, so yes, there is, I think there needs, so for procedural, we would want to, we can have a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Reopen the public hearing for a minute.
Well, we can do that afterwards, right? We always do it afterwards.
Mr. Peterson, just.
I have a comment for clarification.
Yes.
With the public hearing closing, and if we're going to redraft the ordinance, then there'll have to be a new application submitted, a totally 100% new application for my understanding, which would mean the re-noticing, redoing everything, where if the Plan Commission would like to reopen it and then continue it for a certain time so we could work on redrafting with the information hearing from tonight, the testimony that was provided, trying to amend the draft ordinance and then bring it back here at a date certain. I will tell you that, you know, we would expect some time because this is the height of our construction season again. And I want to be able, if we come back, to do it correctly, address some of the concerns that were raised tonight. You know, I took very good notes, and you know, I want to have a chance to review some of the other information and then meet with those. We did have others, more than just who testified tonight and at the City Council in the one meeting. We did have emails from others that were against, you know, and wanted and were impacted. So I want to make sure that's clear. Those emails are in the packet that was sent. So we do have to be cognizant of both sides, but I think if you reopen it, continue it to a date certain, it allows staff to work with some of the members here more closely to come back.
Does the applicant have to ask to continue, or do we ask the applicant?
Well, we can make a request as the applicant.
Right. Well, that's the only way, right?
Or, I mean, or if there's more information, you have questions that he needs time to take. Yeah, so he would make a motion. We open the hearing, make a motion to continue so we can address the concerns. Otherwise, the public hearing is closed.
Well, we have two options. We can either, the director could ask for a motion to continue, or we can vote on the as written. I get the reopening, but we can't ask to continue. Applicant has to ask to continue.
Folks should
You have
hear
to
what
reopen
the
it first.
discussion is.
The procedural question is whether if there is a request to continue, who has to make that request? And the question was, would the applicant be the one making that request? So what we first need to do, if there was a request for that by the applicant, then we'd reopen the public hearing, take a motion for a continuance to a date certain. That would alleviate any additional need for, you could do that here, that continue hearing on a shorter term basis. Otherwise, the formal notice requirements would go into effect, and we'd be looking at least 2 to 3 months out.
So the other issue is by the city code, once this public hearing is closed, a determination of that has to be submitted to the city council in writing within 15 days. That means that tonight then, whatever changes you recommend once you close the public hearing, whatever conditions and changes you make tonight are what's going to be forwarded to the city council. I don't believe, from what I've heard tonight, the line of questioning that has been had by the ZBA, that you're comfortable yet in a consensus with what the draft, the ordinance should look like. And I don't, in my professional opinion, based on what I heard tonight, based on the commentary, I don't know if the other choices is you close the public hearing and you take a vote to either recommend it as submitted, recommend it with conditions, or just outright deny it, which is also a choice. And then it would go to the city council within the next 30 days.
Then city council's going to send it back to us.
Right, so at this, so Director Peterson, at this point, I think there is enough questions to where, if I'm going to speak for myself, I'm leaning towards a vote no as written, because there are too many questions and too many corrections that I feel need to be addressed in the text amendment. So the question to you is, would you exercise the option to continue if I reopen the hearing?
Yes, and the reason behind that is that at the end of the day, we'll be coming back because we've been directed to come back with another draft ordinance. So whether it's 60 days from now, 90 days from now, 120, and I think in all fairness to the folks that do keep chickens, and to those folks who are residents that nobody really truly knows what their responsibility, what the rules are, and come to an enforceable position. So based on that, I think there's enough questions to continue the public hearing to a date certain. Let staff work with, there's a committee that they've got that I think would be worse. I think that committee should also have 1 or 2 members of non-chicken owners to get a true perspective of, from both sides. It can't just be one side or the other. So that would be my proposal. You can accept that or not, but that's where I'm at.
Let's, I'd like a motion to reopen public hearing case number ZBA 24-01 PUD at 10:08 p.m.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye. Is the applicant's wish to continue the public hearing?
I would recommend a continuance for 90 days to report back to the ZBA on progress towards this based on where we're at, and it will take time to evaluate this.
We have that date. There would be a motion for it.
You want September.
What?
You want September.
September, what's the
26th.
what's the 4th Wednesday of September?
September 25 and a half.
Okay.
And 25.
That sounds right. That sounds like the right date per the schedule.
Yeah, that's the 4th Wednesday.
4th Wednesday of the month.
Okay. I'll ask for motion to continue.
Motion to continue the public hearing, to actually continue the public hearing to that date certain.
Yep.
At the same time.
All right, can I please have a motion to continue public hearing case number ZBA 24-01 PUD until September 25th?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. right, this meeting is still in session.
Yep.
Our next item is public comments for any non-agenda items. Since there's a number of people here, if there's any other comments, we can hear them now.
Did you guys win today?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay. For the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals, on Tuesday, July 16th, there will be a special joint meeting of the ZBA and the City Council with the city's zoning consultant to have a report of the Phase 1 summary of the zoning code, and then a proposal and recommendation for moving forward with a rewrite of the zoning code. So the
At
meeting will be
7 p.m.?
At 6:30 p.m. And we will be sending out a notice to everyone. And Michael Blue from Teskin Associates will be here to present his summary report on his analysis of the condition of our existing zoning code and recommendations moving forward for a rewrite.
Okay, great.
You guys can leave if you want to.
Is
Grace is ready.
We're here with solidarity.
They're so excited by this process. I have to take it up. Thank you guys.
All right, well, if there's no other, is there any, Director Peterson, are there any other updates on the, no? Can I please have a motion to adjourn at 10:13 p.m.?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, folks.